I think the biggest thing that holds people back from living the life they want is the fear of starting over. It's the fear of like starting again. We golden handcuff ourselves all the time. When you become successful at a thing, it makes it really hard to walk away from or to change or to do something different.
Well, howdy.
Howdy.
Welcome to Austin.
Feel like I fit like a glove.
Yeah, I know. You're the most Texan-looking Canadian I've ever met.
Yeah.
Matty, I have to say thank you so much for being here and doing this.
It's my pleasure.
I know we're on a tight time schedule, so I appreciate you allowing this to happen. I think you and I are two individuals who love talking to people and enjoy meeting people.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that when you put two people who have that addiction together,
It is an addiction. It is an addiction.
you won't know when to have the conversation. So,
I don't know if it's going to be just a stream of conscious thought today, I'm sure.
oh yeah.
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 I think you and I are also, I've always thought that you and I make up part of the fringe element of our industry too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't ever think of us as like these mainstream type of artists, I think, inside of this whole thing.
I think it's one of the things is we don't let share define us as something as a part of what we do. You were a barber. You were classically like a traditional hairdresser before you were a barber.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think that you have a lot of other interests outside of cutting hair. That is a part of you. It's not all of you.
Yeah.
I think when people say like, "Oh, you're a hairdresser," I'm like, oh, yeah, but
it's what ends up in the butt. That sounded awful. It's what exists.
That's going to be a clip.
It's, it sounded right in my head. I was like, that's deep. But then I said it and I was like, that's deep in the butt sounds even worse. And I'm like, no, it's what it is there is a lot that exists on the other side of that. But,
Absolutely.
and I think that a lot of people,
We could say as well.
yeah, as well.
There
Sure.
you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was just going to be a long conversation about bourbon, wasn't it?
That bourbon is already in here. Already. This is great.
That's the truth serum.
All right, man. Let's get to it. We don't have a lot of time.
Well,
a lot of ground to cover.
And I need some help with this thing because I've been looking like a wayward cowboy here. I've been saving it for you,
Yeah.
and I got to be on stage this weekend, and I look like a vagabond.
Can I be absolutely just candid with you?
Yeah.
I feel, and maybe you don't feel like this, but I always get a little nervous cutting another hairdresser who you respect.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you admire for all the things they've accomplished and what they do for the industry. And so I just want to say I'm not nervous. However, I do feel thank you for trusting me with your.
Oh man, yeah, 100%. First of all, your work is amazing, so I got no fear. But also, and this is not a slight against you, I'm so not precious about my hair. Surprisingly, for all of the ideas and the accolades and stuff, I am the guy that, like, if you come and apply for a job at my shop and didn't bring a model, I'm going to sit in the chair and go, all right, cut my hair. I've never really hated a haircut. I'll be honest with you. I've never hated a haircut before
until today.
So this is, right? Huge shoes to fill. But I go to every person in my shop. I go to, I only go to my shop, obviously, because that would look bad.
Yeah.
But I have other people, friends and stuff that have always cut it. I've always liked my haircuts. So
you do great work.
You can't mess this up.
Photography, but you do, document everything. So
yeah, you really can't mess this up. Although, right now it's been a couple months since I've had a haircut.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of flow right now.
I'm digging the sparkles.
The sparkles.
Yeah, and your sparkles are coming through. It looks nice.
I'm getting old as shit.
We all are.
It comes on you quick.
I know you're in your 40s.
Yep.
And you have great hairline, good head of hair.
Yeah, I'm not going bald, that's for sure.
It's a great thing, man.
I'll take it.
Yeah, me too. I'll take gray all day. I said something and they go, Tab, if you go gray, are you going to color your hair? I said, look, if I get to choose gray or losing hair, nothing against it bald, man.
None.
Some people look cooler bald.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bruce Willis.
I was just going to say Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Weird with hair.
Jason Statham.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? The Rock.
The Rock.
The prime example of someone who should have never had hair.
100%.
And I'll choose gray before it runs away every single time.
Agreed.
Like, I'll take gray hair. I don't mind being long, silvery hair or white hair.
Sure.
I'm fine. I'll look like Gandalf.
That's where it changes for me because like I find the grayer it gets, the less I want lengths. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like when I think I grew up at that time where it's like all the older handsome guys with gray hair were like these fashion designer type guys, right? And all they did was wear black t-shirts and short choppy haircuts. And it just like that's what is imprinted in my mind is when you go gray, you should have short or clean cut hair kind of thing. And I find as mine is starting to go on the sides, it's not there yet. I still got dark enough that I can kind of pull off whatever. But
well, if it ever goes full white and you feel like shaving your beard, you could go as the guy from the Sopranos.
Oh yeah. What's that? Who's that guy?
I can't remember his name.
Polly Walnuts or whatever, something like that.
Polly.
I think that I think that's the thing. The only thing I don't color my hair ever, but I have been known to throw a little bit of color in my beard from time to time.
Yeah,
because that's the thing that I think is I'm most sensitive about is I'm starting to get quite gray in the front here. So I'll just kind of I'll touch it up a little bit just to kind of fudge things. That's my confessional. It's my confessional right there.
That's good. So here, let's move the hat out of the way.
Yeah. Take that.
With that, right here.
It's my favorite hat. Beautiful.
And let's get to this. So what is it that you like? What do you don't like? What do you normally do when you're not just wearing a cowboy hat?
Sure.
Or wearing a hat in general. So what is it that you would normally, what's your normal like style routine?
I keep things pretty classic. I mean, I wear a hat a lot, you know, and I'm not sure why, cause I have a good head of hair, but I've always liked hats.
Yeah.
And, funny thing is I've been wearing a different style of cowboy hat for maybe the last 10 years and nobody's ever made any mention of it. And then I switched up just the style of cowboy hat that I wear. Yeah. And suddenly everybody's like, oh, he's a cowboy now. And I'm like, huh. I have been wearing a cowboy hat for almost a decade. So
I think there's probably something with the height of the crown and the flare. Like I like a flat brim because I'm a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan.
Oh yeah.
So that's my favorite guitar player. My son's middle name is Vaughn for that reason.
Amazing.
Flat brim, all that, like to me doesn't feel cowboy-esque.
Fair. No, it's true.
But you are also totally embracing this new side of you that I think you're just really starting to uncover. It's probably been there.
Yeah. Well, I think you could probably attest to this with hats. It's all about how you adjust to the size of that hat, right? I mean, like you look at a lot of guys will wear a hat and they'll be like, that's so huge. And then you wear a smaller hat until that becomes very normal. And the next thing you know, it's like bigger and bigger, right? And yeah, looks good.
We have the same size hat, dude.
Actually, that looks great on you, man. That's a good hat. That was made by one of my really good friends, actually.
It's a cool looking hat.
It's a custom made for me. Yeah. That was the ranch flare is what I went for this time, which was something a little different for me. And that's what everybody got all of a sudden excited about. We can talk about that for sure. That's a big part of my life right now. As far as the hair goes, I usually like to keep a little bit of length on top. I always push it back.
Always push
it. And I'm always wearing back like off the side.
Are you using a brush or just your hand?
No, just my hand.
So I get out of the shower, towel dry.
Yep.
Throw some Victory brand.
I will.
What product are you using in your own hair? What of your brand are you using? I have to know this.
I mean, I use everything depending on what I want it to look like that day. But the most common one I use is still pomade. Like I grew up with a very handsome old school grandpa. You know what I mean? Always had a part in his hair. Always had his side slicks. So the first thing I do in the morning when I get out of the shower is I usually will throw a little bit of pomade in it. I'll run a comb through it. I'll get it into some sort of nice slick. After that, I run my hands through it to break it apart a bit. You know what I mean? Just so it doesn't look too glued into place. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I use pomade and I let it dry and then I break it apart. Cool. And if I need something after that, I'll use like a paste or something.
So you said this is about 2 months, you said.
I'd wager almost 3. Like It's getting pretty long.
Are you enjoying any elements of this?
I mean, it's one of those things where the day before you get it cut, it behaves itself.
I know.
And then the next day, if you don't cut it enough, the next day you're like, I regret not cutting it enough. I usually wear it pretty short on the sides and back, and usually leave some length through the top. Sometimes I disconnect it. Sometimes I blend it. It's really up to you, man.
Do you want to have clippers involved?
I don't. I mean, usually the only part I get clippered is like the nape of my neck. So I usually like wear it a little bit of a low taper.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not so committed to a taper. I'm not so like, I need to have this tapered out. You know what I mean? I love to have like a little texture in it right now, actually.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't hate the texture.
I'm going to try and pull up a photo, see if I have.
Yeah, go for it.
It's actually...
what I hate is the size. I hate that it just feels so big right now.
Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that.
I love this whiskey.
I don't have it. There's a photo, funny enough. It is, I don't know if he sent it to me or just showed it to me. But Brandon from The Killers at one point was really into this photo of Clint Eastwood from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, that's a classic.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking what I liked about it is that if you groom it and you're well groomed as well, like if you were in a tuxedo or a suit or something, you look really polished, put together. But it had just enough roughness around the edges that when you didn't do anything, you looked like a badass.
Well, I'm
out on the Wild West.
I can always use help with looking that way.
So
I'm too friendly, so I could. The more badass I look, the better it balances me out.
That's because you're fucking Canadian.
Balances me out. That's true. It's so true.
Canadians are so fucking friendly.
Yeah, man, it's the worst.
See, and you're all like, sorry.
Sorry.
So here's the thing. I'm thinking not anything. I want to cut it, but not so short. Like I'm thinking at the edges of my things is going to be the absolute top right through here.
Yeah.
I'd like to go through and scissor cut the edges.
Agreed.
So that way it doesn't have that meticulous thing. Unless there's a hair, I just still feel comfortable doing.
No,
I don't really feel like doing a low taper here in the back. I would rather go through with like the blending scissors and kind of like lighten the load in the back.
Yeah.
Not so much actually have it like a
perfect
fade or tape.
Love it.
And then in the top here, let's just see how the length works with it.
Sure.
And just play it by ear.
The only thing I'm a little precious about is the length in the front. Like that front area. Like, I mean, it's a tiny bit too long right now, but I always like to have more here just to keep it back.
I'm not imagining taking that short. Actually, I'm really I'm doing this is I'm thinking like there's like this little bit of this triangle right here.
Yeah, that's what I usually do too.
Preserve that.
Love it.
So that way you can kind of, if you want to, you can get a nice clean palm. You can wear it and kind of get like that, that
little fold over kind of side swept. Yeah. No, we're talking the same language. I love it.
Before we start, let me grab my clippers real quick. I know I just said no clippers.
No, you're good.
That's when before anything gets to, I just want to clipper all this stuff.
Oh, that t-shirt line. Thank you. Yeah. That's the telltale. It's like, that's how you know I haven't had it cutting for it.
Yeah. Let's just get this off. Let me just blow this off real quick because this will be distracting to me.
Agreed. Me too.
I don't know about you, but like in the salon, I'm like, can we just do this before we get why I'm like, all these little hairs don't cut as cleanly on the wet or sweaty.
Normally I keep that like relatively trim because I got friends in the shop that'll do it for me. But I've been out of the shop now for the last month, working on a ranch, and so turns out cowboys don't know how to clipper.
I mean, that is true. All right, let's put on the cape and let's get going, man.
Great. Oh, nice! Look at your little emblem here.
All right, let's do this, man.
Okay. You ever notice how when I teach classes, I do this and it's really fun. And then I just caught myself doing it is when guys don't know what they want to do with their hair, usually you just make it look weird and then they'll put their own hands in it to try and fix it because it's uncomfortable with your hair all puffed out.
And then you see how they move their hair naturally.
Exactly. And then you see what they're going to do with it. And that's usually what they want for a haircut. And it's just really funny because I caught myself doing that just now. And I've been staring at myself with my hair all puffed up, feeling very awkward. And I'm like, even I know that's happening. I know it I know it mentally, but yeah. And I just did it. And now when my hands are under the cape and you can't do anything, you're just awkwardly sitting there.
I'm just looking at this. I'm just thinking okay.
Yeah, you have carte blanche, my friend. You can honestly do what you want.
Well, I just think that it is what it is, man. We're gonna have some fun.
I mean, I always let people do what they want. My biggest pet peeve is when people will come in and say absolutely nothing and go oh, whatever you want. You know what I mean?
What do you say to that? Because I'm a complete smartass. I go, cool, we're doing mohawks.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And I'll say that to women, or I go, oh, let's give you Homer Simpson's hair. And I start seeing the really absurd shit.
Sure.
To point out the absurdity.
Yeah.
And I go, what's your favorite color? Whatever color it is. What's your favorite color, Matty?
Yeah, but I mean...
They'll go blue, and I go, oh, I fucking hate that color. My color is red. They go, I hate that. I go, well, you're getting a red haircut. Whatever it is. Just to point out, you do have an opinion. You do care about your appearance.
Totally.
But for some reason, you just look at me
well, it's also insecurity a lot of the time. People just don't want to say what they think because they're afraid of being judged for it, or they're afraid that maybe you think something's cooler. But I mean, I want input. I always want to go back and forth with somebody. You know what I mean? My whole thing is to try and make you look like the best version of yourself. not like somebody else. Not like I want to make you look like someone else. I hate when guys have like a hover girlfriend or hover wife or whatever comes in and she's like showing you pictures of Brad Pitt and you're like, this is not Brad Pitt. Like I want him. And even if I gave him that haircut, he's not going to feel confident in it. He didn't ask for it himself. You know, if you're going to come in and ask for that haircut on his behalf, then I mean, you're already losing because you just want to be attracted to confidence. You don't want to be attracted to some guy with Brad Pitt's haircut. You know what I mean? You want him to be confident for himself. And it's not going to do it that way.
And the idea is that, you know, there's that old phrase like 2 heads are better than 1. So you come in with an idea for what you want with your hair and they're asking for a second opinion. Ergo, 2 heads are working together to come up with a better outcome from the person wearing the haircut.
Absolutely.
And you go, what's in style? And I would say confidence.
Yeah, I love that answer.
And they're like, why? And I go, confidence is always in style.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you feel confident.
Agreed.
You're going to wear it better. That's how people can wear bizarre outfits. Like, I'm going to use an example of, I think it's bizarre outfits, but like, and people will say, oh, he's a fashion designer. Yeah. But like Rick Owens has some pretty bizarre outfits.
Sure. But I like his
like he wears it and the people who wear his stuff wear it with what?
Agreed. Yeah.
Confidence. And that's why it looks good on them.
Yeah. And it's like the lines that he picks for stuff are almost kind of cartoonish and over exaggerated. You know what I mean? And that is going to speak to somebody's personality. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And they're going to go, oh, this is me. And I feel great wearing it.
But isn't that just it? Like, it's you. You're like, okay, well, this is what I want. I want to be this. And it's like, you can be anything you want to be, really. You just have to commit to that and be like, look, this is who you are. Fine. You have to commit to it then and be it.
Yeah. Like people talk about the 90s baggy jeans are coming back and Jinkos from the early 2000s. I'm like, dude, I don't want to wear that. I also don't know if I want to wear skinny jeans anymore.
I totally remember those the first time they came around though, because this is gonna break the internet. When I was 19 years old, I was a DJ, and I DJ'd house music with my friends.
Really?
At like underground, like rave parties. Remember raves?
Yeah. Oh, I used to go to them when I was like 16, 17.
Exactly.
Trance raves.
Yep.
And they were basically drug dance.
Yeah, of course they were.
They were not this cool EDC thing.
No, different.
No, yeah.
No, it's different. It was underground and kind of grisly.
I was to say it's totally grimy for sure.
But I mean, when I was 19 years old and just learning at hair school and all that kind of stuff, man, my friends and I were like DJs.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in the 90s, that was like the coolest thing you could be. And so me and my friends were all doing that. And I didn't do it very long. I think I stopped doing it when I was like 22, 23. It was because of that culture. Because that, like, as much as I liked the creative part of it, it didn't fit who I really was as a person. You know what I mean? Yeah. It never really felt like I was like, oh yeah, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just more about trying to be accepted into a culture of people.
The other thing is you could just also just really enjoy the music and not have to enjoy the lifestyle that comes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's like a big thing.
For me at that age, I was really searching more for like who I was. You know what I mean? It was,
yeah.
I think you find people who you look at, you think are cool, and you go, oh, well, maybe I'm that. You know what I mean? And then you try and learn everything about that culture that you can. And it never was a thing that I actually loved. I was just trying to fit into that. And like the music was good, but I didn't have a great taste in music back then. I didn't have great taste and sense of style, or, you know, at 19, I wasn't like supremely confident. The fact that I went into hair school was like kind of weird.
How did that happen?
I was working at a restaurant, and I met a whole bunch of people that happened to be hairstylists, because we were situated right in between two of the very popular hair salons where I grew up, and everybody that walked in there looked like a rock star. I was a late bloomer, kind of an awkward kid. I didn't have like much of a sense of my own style or any real sense of who I was, to be honest. And I just saw these people that had this great personality, and they wore cool clothes and listened to cool music, and they just, I don't know, there's some joy of life that they seem to have. You know what I mean? They all seem to love their job. And I don't know, there's something cool about it that I just wanted to try. Also, all the girls that were hairdressers at the time, I had a crush on every one of them. I was like 19. Like, what else are you thinking when you're 19? I had a crush on all these girls.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought, I can be a hairdresser.
I used to jokingly say, like, why'd you become a hairdresser? I'm like, to meet girls.
Sure.
I'm like, really? Like, no, I just thought it was fun.
The funny thing about it is there is a lot of truth in that statement for me. Like, I really did think at that time, I was like, this is a genius way to meet girls. I was working, I mean, I tried other things as a mechanic, and that was a terrible way to meet girls. And,
Oh yeah, my guy friends were making fun of me going to cosmetology school with all the,
me too.
assumptions, right? But when they would have a party, guess who brought a lot of people with them?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, man, I was like, where do you meet all these girls? I go to school with them. I go, why are you even making fun of me going to cosmetology school? And I've been working indoors with beautiful women who are super nice and everyone's really friendly.
Sure.
Meanwhile, you're digging dishes with sweaty dudes farting on each other.
Yeah, this is how I spend my day.
Against digging ditches and farting on each other. It's just not the environment I would like to find myself in 5 days a week.
It was something like that. It was similar. It was like I didn't quite get along with the guys. I think I just had a bad first experience and I didn't really love it. And then other things ended up that I did love, because you and I are the same. We love talking to people. Yeah. We're people, and we're also like, we're people that like to make other people feel good. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing. It's that's a huge thing as a hairstylist, as a barber. The irony that I started out to meet girls and then became a barber
is even funner.
It is actually.
It's a great thing. I worked with a colorist, and when he chose hair because he thought it would be great, but he said he made the wrong choice becoming a colorist. He would look over at the salon and see. He goes, why is it that all you dudes have the most gorgeous men in your chairs? He's like, I should have chosen hair cutting. He's like, then I would have had more boyfriends. And we were laughing our asses off at him because he would always, like, if there was like an open station, he'd set up the color. He'd be like highlighting his blonde lady. And he would just be like, peeking over the whole time. It was the funniest stuff. Would always be like, oh, Jack.
That's one way to do it. I think the thing is, though, is like hairdressing kind of ruined that whole illusion for me, though. You know what I mean? It's like you're too far on the other side of the curtain. Do you know what I mean? Like, you hear the crazy, you hear it, and you are having the conversations and all the things, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's different. And so it was. I think getting back into barbering was closer to who I am.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and that was a big part of that transformation for me. And people thought I was crazy. You know what I mean? This is the thing that people don't really think about.
What year was this for you?
This was 2009, 2010.
So this is like right around that time, like Boardwalk Empire is just
it just happened.
Mad Men had already been on the radar. I remember watching the movie Leatherheads.
Remember that one? Of course, yeah.
And after I saw that movie, I remember telling him, I go, those haircuts, popular. And everyone in our salon was like, that's ridiculous. I said, it's the one thing we haven't done as an industry, as a style.
Yeah, in a long time.
And it's the most rebellious thing you can do. Is when everything's so flat iron and so spiky and so disconnected. Yeah. How do you rebel? Keep heart coming over, calling it a day.
Well, that was exactly it. But when I was getting into those haircuts, like, everyone was making fun of me because they were like, why are you making guys look like your grandpa? Because everyone looked like Justin Bieber or like Ashton Kutcher with like, that flat iron. Pete Wentz. Yeah. Like, everybody had those haircuts. And doing those like old classic square haircuts, like, didn't make sense to people. They just thought it was weird.
Unless you were like a traditional tattoo artist.
Sure.
That was your...
Yeah.
That was like your wardrobe.
Hot rod culture or like something like that, right? Yeah.
Skin phase, what they call it, Deaf Cliff, the White Wall, exactly. Stuff. Yeah, psychobilly.
So, I mean, if you weren't part of that culture, it didn't make sense. And but that was always alive and well. It was underground. You know what I mean? Totally. I love that kind of stuff. I was always really drawn to that. And I love doing those haircuts and I love doing that old classic stuff. And that's kind of what I became known for eventually.
And then next thing you know, you're doing the mustache for Jim Carrey and Sonic.
I mean, to make a long story short, yeah. I mean that did happen, but it was there's a lot of things that happened in between those points.
Totally, but it's just one of those things to think about, like that one change.
Yeah,
of going, I'm going to focus on men's hair. Back then, like, people don't realize. I think some of the changes, like, I'm going to stop doing this, which is the craziest thing because people say you only get somewhere by starting to do something.
Sure,
and you're like, I'm going to stop doing this.
I think that life is about starts and stops. I think the biggest thing that holds people back from living the life they want is the fear of starting over. You know what I mean? It's the fear of like starting again. We golden handcuff ourselves all the time. You know what I mean? When you become successful at a thing, it makes it really hard to walk away from or to change or to do something different. And that's something that's happened to me a couple of times in my life. I didn't go into barbering because I wasn't successful as a hairstylist. I was incredibly successful. I was traveling all over the world and working for big companies, and I had a career that most people envied. But it wasn't who I was anymore. It's not that I wasn't that person for a time. It's not that it didn't fit me for when I was in it, but people evolve, people change, people grow. And I think eventually you get outside of that.
People are allowed to change.
Well, not if you talk to the internet,
right?
But yeah, people do. And I think one of the big things I was trying to explain to people about the most recent changes I've been going through is that I think that a lot of us got into this thing where the internet came along and suddenly we had everyone's opinion and it seemed to matter to us in a way that, we never had to deal with that before. It's the only people's opinion mattered were the people that were in your immediate bubble.
Yeah. And that was probably maybe 8 likes.
Yeah, exactly. And
nobody 800.
Yeah. Nobody cared. What was really interesting though, is we got into this phase where we started making a brand out of ourselves. And that's something that I learned a lot about because when I started doing barbering and when I started doing social media, and everything blew up, everyone kept telling me, "Oh, but you've built such a solid brand of yourself. You're so well branded." And I'm like, I didn't really totally know what they meant at first, and then I kind of figured out what they were talking about.
What was it that they were talking about?
Well, what they meant is there was a consistency and a style to it all that was a through line. You know what I mean? Where it's like you knew my work before you had to see the name. I just had a style to the stuff that I liked, but that was all built out of what I liked, right? It was just what felt good to me. The thing that I looked at and go, "Oh, that looks cool," and that was it. But eventually, you kind of build this lens, and you're telling this story, and everything has this kind of feel to it. And I think that that's good. I think that that's easy to do if you're just doing what you like. It's hard to do if you're trying to be something that you're not. When I was doing all that, it was really interesting because that idea of that brand, you build a brand of yourself. It at first sounded real good. It sounded really good to everybody, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I've learned is that a brand is something that is not meant to evolve. A brand is something that is consistent over the long term. It's something familiar, and it's something that people rely on to be able to determine like kind of what they're looking at, what their style is or whatever. It's not meant to be this thing that constantly changes. You know what I mean? Look at Apple. Like Apple is a brand. Apple has been small changes, but relatively consistent over the course of its existence, right? Yeah. If Apple just turned it hard left and decided to start making electric cars, remember when we saw that whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're not an electric car company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so even if the guy that owns Apple is like hard set on making electric cars and wants to be an electric car company now, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to accept that.
It's funny, you said electric car, and I still thought that was too close to what they do. I was thinking like dishwashers.
Sure, exactly. You know what I mean? But the only reason I said electric car is because I think I saw a thing that they were trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, when Steve Jobs was alive, he wanted to do an electric car.
Sure, and then look where that fell, right? And because the public opinion of that is going to come up so heavy against it, and they're going to become a deterrent. So making yourself into a brand is a really wholly unhealthy thing because you get locked into this box that is not allowed to change anymore, even though the person that owns that or the person that is undergoing that constant state of evolution. Eventually, I got into a situation where I was like, I'm stuck. Like I'm stuck as this thing that I was, but I might not be anymore. You know what I mean? And then you go searching for that next thing that you are, or allowing yourself. Let me rephrase that. You're not searching for the next thing you are. You're allowing yourself to express the person you've become.
Sure.
Right. Instead of being like, well, yeah, but that's not on brand for me. Like, what does that even mean? Like,
it's a weird phrase.
It is a weird phrase.
And now everyone has to have a brand.
Sure.
Not everybody is a brand. Like it goes back to this idea that I have thought about is like, they say, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's all cheese and no Indians, right? And these phrases that people just spout around. And like if everybody has a brand, then like who's buying the brands?
Yeah.
Like at some point there's creators, but not everyone is a creator. Not everyone is an influencer to the scale that is an occupation. Like I'm an influencer because I have kids.
Yeah, you influence 6 kids.
Right? So everybody is an influencer, but not as an occupation. I feel like these terms kind of get, the more you use a term loosely, I think it starts to water down the meaning. Sometimes
I think
and I could be the odd man out on this. I absolutely could. I just feel that when people start saying things, and I'm like, they go like, well, I'm an influencer. I do this, this, and this. And I go, okay. Then you look at the stuff like, well, what I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I've always said, like, I don't know. I'm really liking the way this is.
I'm loving it right away. I'm liking it.
Awesome.
I think Andy Warhol said this thing that everybody knows. This is one of his most famous quotes. He's like, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes.
True.
Right. What he was, I think people give it that credence that I think a lot of people have taken that idea of that 15 minutes of fame, right? And thinking that that's it. You get 15 minutes
Of actual celebrity fame.
But what he was actually talking about isn't that. What he was talking about is that when everyone is special, then no one is. See what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And I don't think that that's meant as a slight. I don't think it's meant as like a nobody's special, you're not special. Everyone is special, right? Everyone is uniquely special and gifted at some things, but that doesn't mean that they have to be a public figure for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And even that idea of that public figure thing has really diminished in my mind. That idea, this like, what is the point of that? What is the payoff of that? You know what I mean? And is there a purpose to it? And I think that some people use theirs very responsibly and some people don't. Even the idea of like, what is using it responsibly? What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean to people? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, it's, these are all deep philosophical questions, and I'm not kidding around. Like they really are. Like, what is the use of being responsible with a large social media following?
Sure.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think people, like right now, there's a ton of political debate online, and these are people that are very, very committed to their position on things. They're very committed to their perspective. Absolutely. Right? And to them, using things responsibly is about absolutely trashing someone that has a different opinion than them. And in their mind, that's a responsible use of their celebrity or responsible use of their notoriety. And I mean, it's a challenging thing,
I've always felt for my own personal social media responsibility is I made a promise to myself to not get involved in a couple conversations.
Yeah.
Which is I will only post hair, family, food, travels.
Yep.
I can't post anything I find truly funny.
Because no one would like you anymore. Yeah.
No one would.
I know. Same here. I have to keep my sense of humor to myself a lot of the time.
You can send me the memes all you want.
Sure.
And I also don't do anything political.
Yeah.
Because
same.
I remember somebody saying like, if I forgot who it was, maybe it was Matty Conrad or whatever. But he's like, if he were to ever run for an office, he's automatically going to isolate half of his fan base.
Sure.
And I thought that was like a really honest answer. If I say I like candidate A or candidate B, I'm going to piss off somebody that I don't know about. And then they're going to say, oh, that guy, blah, blah, blah. I just don't want to be part of that. I have other things on my personal agenda to waste my time on and to spend my time on than that.
And I think the thing is that once you put that out there, people make a decision about you and they fix you in place. Like I said, like you can't evolve anymore. It's like you can't,
definitely stuck on something.
You're not allowed to change your mind on a topic. No. You're not allowed to learn some new information and maybe take a different position. You know what I mean? Yeah. Once you said it, you're there forever. And I don't like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm one of those people that is on a lifelong journey of learning, and I'm constantly trying to evolve my position on things. I'm constantly trying to understand the world better, understand myself better. And this is something that is never going to end. It's a lot of work, and things do change and evolve. The more I learn about myself, the more I learn about the world around me. It does shift. And I think that it should.
We are curious.
Yeah.
And I feel there's been a lack of curiosity the last several years.
What's the thing that you're most curious about, like in life?
Right now?
Yeah. Currently.
My thing right now is food.
Oh, nice.
I'm really curious about food. And it's a very generalized, non-polarizing politically topic. However, it has been with the Kellogg's ban.
Yeah.
You have Callie and Casey Means. They went up there and I know about this because I had people who were not political and not deep into the food conversation hosting something that now is very much political.
Yeah.
If I said, hey, I don't want GMO crops, or I don't want to have glyphosate sprayed on my food.
Yeah.
That didn't seem like a crazy and unreasonable thing to not want pesticides on the things you're eating.
I mean, yeah.
But now people have turned this into a political charged emotion. And it angers me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is food. This is what we all have, right?
Yeah.
It should go under the categories of clean air, clean water, right? Like, to me, it's just seems like a thing we would all agree on. We want the best of the best.
But the problem is what people attach to that, right? Because they're not, everyone agrees clean food and clean water is a good thing. But all of a sudden, it's how it's decided that you then also believe all these other things.
Exactly. And when I say food, it's like, I don't just mean that. I also mean like cooking food. I have friends that are chefs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have a friend who's a chef in the neighborhood. My buddy Spencer, he was on the podcast. My buddy Andre, who was on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Morales, we're going to reshoot his podcast because something happened on the podcast to reshoot it. But he was a Top Chef winner when they did it in Portland. So I'm surrounded by people who cook, like legitimate cooks, legitimate chefs.
They cook well,
know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. So like food is something, because I think like food, my outlook currently in life is if I can mitigate a lot of the bad stuff out of my life through consuming bad food, I'm going to have a healthier, longer life, which means my kids are going to have a healthier, better life as they become young men.
Yes.
And then I could teach them how to do this and be a steward of good health and making choices. So when they have families,
I find it really interesting, how much more important that becomes when you become a father. And that's one of the things that I have been really curious about. I'm not lucky enough.
you will be.
This year, I had a personal tragedy happen in that arena, and it set me on a completely different path in my life. And it's interesting because I have all these friends that have kids, and I'm such a huge fan of kids. But I think that we have a great capacity to care less about our own safety, care less about our own selves than we do about the people in our charge. You know what I mean? The kids that we are raising, the people who we care for. I mean, I will sit there and suck down a gas station chili dog and not think twice about it. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I would never let my kid do that. And I think it, in theory, but I see the way that changes a man. I see the way that changes ourselves. Like I first noticed it when my friends all stopped riding motorcycles when they had kids, because suddenly, you know what I mean? Your own personal entertainment is not super high on the priority list.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I want a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But I also know how I would behave with a motorcycle.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like for a man, it's never about your own safety that you're worried. Your thought there is, what would happen to my kids if something happened?
Bingo.
It's not what would happen to me. It's what would happen to my kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a big shift for me this year. My personal life took a hit in the sense that, I was with a partner and we were planning a family, and then some things happened and all that fell through, and the family disappeared and the partner disappeared. And in that moment, the future disappeared, because the shift that happens when you think that you're going to go that route, it happens before the kid shows up. It happens the second you realize you're going to be a dad.
Okay.
And for me, that shift happened, and it shifted so many perspectives for me. So many things I was thinking about, so many ways I wanted to interact with the world. And also it really shed a light on some parts of myself that I became curious about. Why I am chasing after my version of success at that time, why I was chasing down certain things, reacting the way I did to certain things. It really does make you curious about yourself.
Yeah.
And that was where a big shift happened for me. At that point, I was looking at my career in barbering as my goal. You know what I mean? The successful shops, the successful brand, the appearance of successfulness on Instagram, all of that stuff. All of it just kind of, I saw it under a stark different light.
Yeah.
And it started this journey for me that was about exploring maybe some of the deeper parts about who I am.
I relate completely.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't obviously go through the same exact stuff that you went through, but I did date a girl who had a daughter. And it's the first time I ever dated somebody who had a child.
Yeah.
And it being in that dynamic of being with somebody who has a child, even though they weren't my child, I really was like, I had this moment of clarity going like, oh, this is actually what's been missing. How do I get this?
Yep.
And obviously I didn't do that with that person. Obviously I did it with my wife, totally different person, and we built a family together. But you have those moments you go, oh, this feels right. It's not it's not 100% right, but this feels more right than it's ever felt before.
Yeah.
So I relate 100% to those things. And I always look at it as like the timing just wasn't right for me. And I always think that, and I'm a big believer of this, call it woo woo, call it whatever you want. I just told this to my wife because what's going on with a career opportunity with her is like everything in your life is building up to the next big thing in your life. And you're learning a skill set, you're learning things. And it's not just like for work, you're learning things about yourself, you're learning things about life, you're learning things about your friends and your family. You're learning all the time. And these are things, are skills that now you can reference. Oh, I feel this way. I've only felt this way at that moment. Is that a good feeling? Is that a bad feeling? And those are the things I think like we're all building up stuff. Like, when people are so worried about doing something, like I have to give a speech in front of 1,000 people over this, whatever it is. I'm like, everything in your life has groomed you for this moment. Don't doubt you. The universe isn't doubting you.
Amen.
Like you need to just move forward with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that from that point forward, there's some big moments in this year where I've come to the realization that I want to build a life for myself that feels good, not one that looks good. You know what I mean? To everyone else. I want it to feel good to me.
I feel everybody's so worried about how everyone, being authentic to who?
Totally.
To the people that follow you?
Yeah, and whatever that means anymore, because I feel like that word has been so bastardized.
What? Authentic?
Authenticity. I feel like people started using it in a way that described things that were old and beat up or just had this, this feeling of nobility or something. But authenticity can be raw and it can be ugly, like depending where you're at in your life. You know what I mean? What's authentic to you in the moment is important. It's based on what are you feeling and what are you going through or what are you dealing with or how are you healing or whatever. There's a lot of that stuff that happens, and authenticity can look really ugly in moments.
Well, I also think authenticity, you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
In order to be authentic, you have to be vulnerable in the moment.
Yeah.
As a guy, and speaking, I don't really find that, you are truly allowed to be vulnerable.
I agree.
And I know this sounds like people say like, oh, well, this and that. Yes, you can't. But the reality is I don't feel people say something, but then the way they react to it.
Yeah. See, it's asked for, but not rewarded.
Yeah.
And that is the thing is we're living in a generation where it's vulnerability is being demanded of us, but we are simultaneously being punished for it. And it's almost like a weird abusiveness. You know what I mean?
You're being gaslit.
Yeah, you're being gaslit in the sense you're like, I want you to be vulnerable, but I can't handle your vulnerability. And I don't want to be responsible for your feelings when you're being vulnerable. And that's just it. It's like, well, then don't ask, and it's one of the reasons, one of the biggest things I learned this year is how important it is to have something and someone outside of your relationship, outside of your other things, outside of your work, where you have a group of friends that you trust or guys that you can relate to that you can actually be vulnerable with, that you can actually share with. And one of the things that really has been so fascinating to me is I got into horses, and
where's the hat?
Yeah. It's leached into the rest of my life for sure.
How many horses do you have to ride before they give you the cowboy hat?
I was given a cowboy hat by a guy that was teaching me how to ride and how to work at a ranch and all these things. It's actually a weird story. What happened is that I went through a divorce this year that was a bit of a surprise to me, and it was unwanted. And I'm sorry, my phone has just been going,
go for it, man,
fucking bananas here, and I feel like some emergency situation is happening. Enderby? I don't even know where Enderby is. It's apparently somewhere not here. It can't be that important. Okay, is there? No, these are all disjointed. There's just 15 things. I was worried that there was like an emergency there, and I was like, because it just keeps going off and going.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, so what had happened was I very unfortunately I got divorced this year. My ex and I haven't talked about this on a podcast yet, but my ex.
Time this releases, it'll be 2025. So you'll have some time to.
I'll be healed.
Yeah.
My ex and I we had some personal tragedies happen that didn't seem to put us in a good place, and she decided that she didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. And so at that point, we had a dream together of doing a ranch. And I talked about the idea of I love animals and I love the outdoors and I love the idea of having that. Our life together could not have looked further apart from that, because we lived in downtown Vancouver because it was COVID, and I was trying to put out fires for a number of my businesses.
Okay.
And trying to survive what was a very hostile climate for an entrepreneur and for business people. It was difficult. It was very difficult. And I was trying my best to keep everything floating.
Especially in Canada too. You guys had it really bad.
We did.
And I'm not saying that politically. No. I'm just saying like you guys were locked down.
Yeah, we were.
Because in Texas here.
Yeah,
it lasted 8 weeks.
Yeah. What made it worse is that my ex is from Florida.
Oh, well, yeah. It lasted 8 weeks there too.
It lasted no weeks there. They didn't close a damn thing. And so it was interesting. For us, it was a different experience. And so what happened when all that disappeared was, for me, was that the idea of the dream that we had together was still something that I had control over. But what we had was a romanticized idea. Right? I mean, the idea of everyone loves the idea of sitting on a ranch, watching the sunset on a porch swing with the sun going down and your kids playing in the yard. Everyone loves that idea. I can't find anybody that would hate
who's getting that idea right now? Andrew.
Yeah, he is. Andrew is.
Andrew is living that dream right now.
But the thing for me is that I knew I wanted animals to be part of that for me. And the whole idea of that was about this romantic idea instead of reality.
Okay.
And what struck me was, would I even like that? Is that even something that I would genuinely like? Or do I just have this romantic idea of that? Am I just living some what I call them someday stories? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think everybody has a someday story. Someday. One day I'm going to do this, or someday this will be what my life looks like. Right. And I had a someday story, and it wasn't a real goal. It was a someday story. And a real goal, the difference is that you're taking steps towards that. You're aiming your life in that direction and taking steps towards it.
And you weren't.
I wasn't. I was too busy putting out fires and dealing with what's in front of me. One of the biggest aha moments I had for myself this year actually came on this retreat that I was on. They asked me about what would I do if I won the lottery and I couldn't work anymore. And I didn't have a good answer.
What was your answer?
I didn't know. I was you're not allowed to do anything related to work. What would you do if money was no object? You know what I mean? And you didn't have to work anymore. And I was thinking about it, and most people would say, well, I'd travel. Right. But I've traveled more than almost anyone I know. I've been all over the world, and in 2019, I was on 150 flights just that year, from Dubai to Tokyo. So travel is something I love to do, but it wasn't the thing that rocketed to mind. And I didn't really have a big answer for that. I started realizing that everything I needed to know about life, I learned when I was little. And I just misinterpreted some of those things, right? Like everybody talks about their childhood traumas, whatever else, but in reality,
I feel like I started to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We talk about trauma all the time. Can we start talking about some of the joys of our childhood?
Absolutely.
Because if you only think of the bad shit, you had a bad childhood.
Sure.
But if you think of some of the good shit,
you had
a wonderful childhood.
Yep.
And granted, some people, I hate to say it, they get the short end of the stick and just everything is just awful.
Sure. I remember playing video games when I was a kid. I had this thing called the ColecoVision. It was like the 8-bit or 6-bit or whatever it was, just a little pixel kind of thing. They had some pretty simple games back then. And one of them was called Frogger.
Oh, I love Frogger.
Remember Frogger?
I actually joke, anytime I'm trying to make a left turn onto a street of oncoming traffic, where it's unprotected from me, I say, I'm doing Frogger, and then I start singing the fucking song as I'm making the left-hand unprotected turn.
So the Frogger is a really simple concept. I mean, you're a frog, you're starting on the grass, and then the next level up, you got cars coming in both directions, about 3-4 lanes of traffic, right? And then you get about 3-4 Logs are floating back and forth in a river. And then at the top is these little slots that you're meant to put the frogs in, right?
Exactly.
Frogger only works as a concept if you know where you're starting and you know where the slots are, right? The slots are the end goal, right? That's where you're going to.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have the slots at the end, you would just jump out into traffic and then you would just jump around in a circle, avoiding the cars, avoiding danger, right? If you didn't have anywhere you were trying to get to, you would just be avoiding danger. I probably spent most of my time since COVID trying to avoid danger, right? And if you don't have a goal, if you don't have an idea where you're trying to get to, then all you're doing is jumping around, avoiding the stuff that's going to hurt, and you don't get anywhere.
It's, oh my God, I feel like what you're talking about is so close to what I was talking about. Friend, I said, most people go through life with the mentality of sprite, where they're going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing without actually knowing where they actually want to end up with all of this running, which is why they're extra tired and they feel overworked, is because they're working twice as hard to run from one spot to the next. But marathon runners, they have a goal. Yeah. Just like you said, they know where the goal is, 24 miles away, whatever it is, and they know how to get there, and they can pace themselves so they're not tired, they don't burn out, they need to take a break, they're fine because they know where they're going to end up.
And they're only running 24 miles.
Because they have a goal.
Exactly.
Just like Frogger.
You're not going to run
here to there.
You're not going to run a whole bunch of detours during a marathon and run, 35 miles and try and end up crossing the same goal. You're not going to do that. You're just going to run the 24 because you know that that's all you need to run. It's the 24.
Exactly.
I was not doing that. I was chasing down almost everything that seemed like it would make sense, that would, be something that might be fun, that would be something that I might be good at. You know what I mean? I would just chase after everything. And I wasn't chasing after the things that were getting me towards that goal. I was just running in circles and tiring myself out. And that was taking a toll on me. It was taking a toll on my relationship. It was taking a toll on everything. And so once I started putting some harder goals into place, some things that I actually wanted for my life, not that would look good to people, that would feel good to me, my life started to change pretty drastically.
It sounds like you put up boundaries.
Somewhat, yeah. But I think I just made things more clear to myself about who I am and what I want. And that changed things for me a lot. And next thing you know, doors started opening up in directions that I would not have expected.
Isn't it crazy how just changing your mind shift changes everything? Like when you make a choice, I want this.
Yep.
So many people won't do that because they need to see the other stuff in motion before they commit mentally to the thing.
Yeah. Or they're too worried about what other people are going to say about it.
Yeah. Which to me is, to me, that is putting up a boundary. I'm not going to listen to you. Like I'm going to be a horse in a race, putting on my blinders, and I'm going for it. Yeah. I always use the horse and blinders reference a lot because I really think it's an amazing metaphor.
Yeah.
And you're around horses.
A lot.
And horses are amazing creatures.
Oh, man.
But when you put those blinders on, that is a hyper focus mindset.
And it has a job to do, and it understands that. And it's interesting because for me, that was part of that learning, was going, a friend of mine who was just a friend through Instagram. I'd used him as a model once a long time ago. I met him through an ex-girlfriend from forever ago who was a photographer. Good looking older guy with a beard kind of thing. Really cool. Turns out he's exactly my age, so he just looks older than me. But I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I see that you have a horse and you're into ranching. I want to learn about this. Like, I'm one of those people that is like, I need to know everything I possibly can about a thing. I'm a lifelong learner. When I find something I set my sights on, I become kind of oddly obsessed with everything that has to do with it. So I just reached out to him and I said, hey, man, can you just point me in the direction of where I can start learning about this? And he said, well, why don't you come out to the ranch in Chilliwack, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. And it's like, why don't you come out here and my family and I will teach you. So not only did I get to spend time with this really beautiful, wonderful family that basically took me in as their own, and I became very, very close to them, I started learning about this. And when I showed up the first day, here I was driving in from the city, and he was doing what they call mucking stalls, which is just a nicer way of saying, he was shoveling horse shit. And he came and he shook my hand, which is always weird when somebody's just been shoveling horse shit and they go to shake your hand and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I shook his hand and he's like, hey, why don't you go down and have fun with the horses? And I'm going to just get this work done. And I was like, well, thanks. I appreciate that, but that's not really why I came. I mean, I do want to work with the horses. I do want to learn to ride. I do want to do all these things, but I want to learn everything about this. I want to learn about this life. So I know if this is for me. And so I just grabbed a rake and I started shoveling horse shit with him. And that was day one, was cleaning out stalls and learning how to be around horses. And, I got up and I rode a horse a little bit, but it's, very, very tame horse. And that was kind of day one. And by the end of day one, there was something in my soul that clicked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was this thing that you're like, oh, damn, this is better than what I thought. This is not just a matter of like, is this a thing that I would like? This might actually be something that matters deeply to me. And the way that you emotionally interact with a horse has taught me so much about myself that I needed to learn as a person.
What's the biggest takeaway?
Emotional presence.
Really?
Huge. It's it's the most profound thing, and it's really hard to explain, but there is something that a horse can draw out of you, like humans have an electromagnetic field that they generate. You know what I mean? It's like part of our senses. It extends about 6 inches from our bodies. Okay, horses have one that extends 10 feet. They're like dolphins on land. They're the most intuitive, emotionally intelligent animals. And they're very, very sensitive to us and very sensitive to our emotional state. And so they react not just to what you're doing, but how you're feeling.
Okay.
And so your vibe, if you're frightened, you and I were talking about, you had a bad experience on a horse early on. If you're scared on a horse, that horse is scared because you're scared. Right. It knows this. It senses this.
I think all animals.
It'll be skittish around you. If you're uncomfortable, if you're insecure, if you're whatever, you know what I mean? Like the horse it can feel a fly land on its back. You know what I mean? It's a 2,000-pound animal. They can feel a fly land on its back. Imagine what it's feeling from you,? And so it's, that was a big one, is about learning emotional presence, about how to create a sense of safety for something else, how to be safe for something else, how to be predictable for it, how to be emotionally available and confident. And it's not just about like, do you think about being confident in your head? It's about what is your body language? What is your emotional state? What is everything else saying about you? And you realize that a lot of people's confidence is very, very thinly veiled, trying to mask insecurity, but a horse sees right through that. You know what I mean? And the level of confidence that you have to start to cultivate and have to be competent on a horse is profound. And there was at one point where through some crazy adventure that I had, where I decided to take this road trip.
I remember I was talking to you on that road trip.
You were,
and I was like, "Man, are you gonna drive down to Texas?" And you're like, "Maybe." And then you spent the majority of the time, in the city I spent half my life in,
which is so weird.
Yeah, I'm like, "You're in Temecula?"
Yeah, so strange.
What the fuck?
Well, what's funny is I'd never even heard of Temecula before that trip. I didn't know anything about that area of California. I had a little convertible that I bought 8 years ago. I had always wanted to do a road trip in this car, and I decided this was the year I was going to do it, and I had no plan. I had no agenda, no itinerary. I had nowhere I had to be by any time or point. I had 5 weeks that I'd taken off to dedicate to this thing. And I just took the car, pointed it south, and I drove. And I decided I was going to go anywhere that felt like where I wanted to be or should be.
Yeah.
I was just going to try and say yes to as many things as felt good. Yeah. Like whatever came up that felt good to me, I said yes. And somehow through some crazy, bizarre turn of events, I ended up caretaking a ranch of 60 rescue horses in the Temecula desert and out in the valley there by myself for 10 days. And I'm somebody that really just got into horses in, I don't know, when did it start? Like maybe April. And here I am by August. I've been doing it so much and I've been spending so much time doing it that now I'm with these people that trusted me enough to take care of 60 horses by myself, like in the middle of the desert. And I mean, I'd been working so much on so many aspects of my life and my character and my, just who I am this year. I've spent so much time really working on that. And it really ended up that these things just fall into my lap in a way that was not planned, was just accidental and was crazy, but also it was a way of me testing myself and showing myself who I am, because that level of confidence that we were talking about,
Yeah.
like nothing will build that more than putting yourself into situations that you might not feel ready for, or you might not feel capable of handling, and you handle it. You know what I mean? Like into something dangerous, and you find out who you are in those moments. You find out who you are when something dangerous happens and you handle it. You find out who you are when you're up against adversity and you don't back down from it. And you show up in every way possible. And
It's true.
working with these horses, it changed my life in so many ways, and showed me a much deeper sense of who I am. And I know that sounds kind of woo-woo too, but
No, I don't. I mean, think about it. Like how many, you have a lot of like people will come back from like a war and they get these service animals, and the service animal heals them. Right.
Yeah.
And it heals them emotionally. I do think there is a human animal connection that we can't put into a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's something you feel.
I don't think I would have believed that, or I might have rolled my eyes at that if somebody had said that's just going to be something that you feel. Me a year ago would have probably not believed you, but me now I know exactly what you mean. Like it's really funny. I did a podcast. The last podcast I did was last October. So it's been a year since I've done a podcast. This year I have kind of dropped off the map. I haven't been involved in the industry very much. I haven't been doing a lot of things. I really decided to focus on myself this year and really cultivate a stronger sense of who I am without all that stuff, without chasing down those things, and just being myself.
Yeah.
100%. And I ended up watching a clip of that podcast just the other day, because again, same thing. These things come out like sometimes down the road. I watched a clip of that podcast. It was with, Chris Barron, who's the guy.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris. So I was on Chris Barron's podcast, and when I watched that back, I don't even recognize myself.
Isn't that crazy?
It's the most bizarre feeling.
You're like, who's this guy talking out of my mouth?
Yeah. It's the most bizarre feeling. And I look the same, I look, well, I mean, mostly, but everything about that guy feels different to me now. And I think people go through these big changes in their life sometimes. And the hardest part about it is other people allowing you to change. When you feel a deeper sense of change in yourself, when you feel an evolution or a growth spurt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Other people allowing you that change is the hardest part. And for me to look back on that and to see that guy and go, I'm not sure I recognize that guy as much anymore. And not in a way that I was ashamed of that, just different. There's growth. There's a deeper sense of confidence. There's a deeper sense of understanding who I am. Those boundaries that we were talking about, those things that shift around in your life because you've decided to choose a life that feels good instead of one that looks good.
I've always thought like dying the same person I started out with is a really waste of time on earth.
It's true. And time is, it's short, man. It's short. And I keep learning that lesson that time is short and that you can go and be anything you want. And the only thing you can't be is useless. And the only thing you can't be is the same as you've always been, because you will waste your life that way.
I agree.
And I want to live every drop of this life that I can.
Yeah.
And so for me right now, like I'm in my cowboy era, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I've been working on a ranch and I've been spending time learning how to, do these things, because I'm never somebody that's just satisfied to wear the getup. You know what I mean? If I can't do the job, if I can't be that for real.
Uh-huh.
And so I've been chasing that down, and it's been this beautifully transformative thing that is making me so at peace with myself.
I think people should be a little bit more introspective more often. When things start going right, like I always think is it me or is it them?
Yeah.
And if I keep having the same thing, then it's probably me. But if it's a one-off and I go, okay, was it? And then I feel like it's probably not me, but it's something I should consider.
Sure.
Sure. How are we doing on the hair, man?
I'm honestly loving this, man. I feel instantly way more handsome.
Because I mean, the easy thing because you're a handsome guy. But for those who are probably going to watch this because they're like, oh, Matty and Tab, it's going to talk about hair the whole time.
No, not even a little.
I just used my really white tooth, multi-tooth scissors.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to have any hard lines.
Yeah, I love that lived in feel.
which I learned from watching old school barbers utilize the two. That's how they were able to get those slick back looks.
That's right.
So blended.
That's right.
It wasn't hard and geometric shapes. That wasn't something really popular until Sassoon came around.
Totally.
And after that, everything was all razors, broken lines. This idea of lived in is really just kind of like going back before Sassoon.
Yeah, the thing that made everything look really hard back then was just the level of grease that people would put in it, right? You'd be combing the lines into it. You wouldn't be creating these really heavy, hard haircuts.
Well, like those cool finger waves. That's what I was looking for earlier.
Totally.
You get your little tousled finger wave. Well, Matty, I appreciate you being vulnerable with me. You're not going to get any judgment.
It was the whiskey, actually, and it's
empty.
Damn you, whiskey is empty.
No, but I do appreciate you. I mean, we had talked about some of the things that we probably would cover, and I'm glad we did. And thank you for being coming on doing this.
Hey, thanks, man. It's good to catch up with you.
I also wanted to say thank you for the encouragement when I saw you last August at the BTC Awards here in Austin.
Yeah,
and you came up. You're like, dude, I really like what you're doing.
Yeah,
and I said thank you. It means a lot. You and Brianna as well.
Cisneros,
yeah,
I love her.
She should be the same thing.
Good people.
Like, okay. And like, I feel in some ways I'm like doing something completely ruining my visual career on Instagram because I'm not posting pretty photos of beautiful hair. But I've always felt that like, and I had to ask clients who've been coming to me for a long time about this I asked, someone's like, I watched the podcast. And I'm like, cool. Is the podcast different than when you get your hair cut by me?
Yeah.
That was like the one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to provide an authentic experience of this in me with the guest.
I nailed it.
And they said they go, watching you with whoever it was feels like when I get my hair cut with you. And I was like, okay, that's what I want. Like, I think this experience of in the day and age when so many people don't know how to have a conversation, like, well, the best way to tell somebody to do something is to be an example of something. You can't tell your kids to clean their bedroom and then you look at your room and your room is messy. Yeah. You have to lead by example. And I'm always like hoping like maybe we can have civil conversations again. Yeah. Maybe hairdressers can talk to the guest in the chair. I switch back and say client, but I'm trying to make a conscious choice to call them a guest because they are the guest in your place. Sure. Treat them like a guest.
I think people miss that. I mean, there are so many people that are lonely these days because a lot of them don't have somebody they can have a genuine conversation with in this kind of environment for a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are carrying around a lot of stuff these days. And I've always really loved that about being a barber is that you open that space for those people to have those conversations.
Yeah.
What I love about what you're doing, and I remember having that conversation with you in Austin, was that everyone at that point seemed to be doing the same thing. It was a huge look at me show of like, look at what I can do. Look at what I can do. Look at what I can do, which is great. And I was doing the same thing. I was posting lots of pictures of cool hair and stuff like that. I really loved making those images. I'd convinced myself that I was inspiring other people to do it. You were, which is great. But now things have shifted. And for my shift has not been look at what I can do. My shift is now I'm going to share who I am, what I'm struggling with, how I'm struggling with it, or how I'm dealing with it. You know, the things that I'm doing that are inspiring me, because I want to share who I am with people so that they understand that this is not just me making some arbitrary change. This is a shift for me. You know what I mean? And I'm allowing people to see that. And because I think a lot of people are struggling in a place where they don't know what to do and they're a little burned out and they're a little stuck. Yeah. And I think that if they can watch somebody that has achieved these things, has done all these things, be able to confidently walk away from that stuff and be like, you know what, I'm going to go do this now because life is short and because I want to live the life that feels good. You know, you making that change and doing this and sharing that with people is your vulnerability, but it's also your purpose. It's you being something purposeful and sharing with other people how to communicate with other people, how to be open with other people, how to have a deeper conversation with folks. And it's far more interesting because who you are is so much more interesting than the work that you do. And that's been the biggest part of the revelation for me this year is who I am. And I tell this to other people. The reason that you should not be a brand for yourself is because who you are is far more interesting than what you create. Totally. And so you opening the door to that was what struck me and what I liked so much about it. Your work is so good, but who you are is so much more fascinating than just the work that you do.
Thank you, man. And I tell people like, I'm just a curious motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want more people to be curious and to step outside their comfort zones. And that's where the fun shit happens.
Agreed.
We always say like life begins outside of your comfort zone. We'll fucking get out. Get out and do it.
You know what though? I needed that this year. I needed to hear that. And I needed life to come and slap me in the face to get me out of mine, to get me out of my circular path through the cars. You know what I mean? Was just, I needed something, as painful as it was to go through. Pain can be the greatest motivator. It can be the greatest teacher. And it has been a profound revelation, you know? So it gives you an opportunity to be even grateful for the things that are painful.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm just letting you hear everybody. You have enough product in there, man.
Honestly, man, I love it just like this. Are you going to be mad if I put my cowboy hat on when I leave this place?
No, God, no.
Isn't that the worst when you're sitting in the chair? Somebody's like, yeah, it's really good. And then walks out the door.
You're just going to have to find your own ride to the hotel.
That's fair.
All right.
That's so fair.
Thank
I love
you
it.
so much,
Honestly,
Matty.
this feels great. Thank you.
And later.
Bye, buddy.